Celeste Morgan stood quietly by the kitchen window of their cozy Atlanta home, gently holding her baby bump. The sun was setting outside, painting the sky with orange and gold. Inside, the only sound was the steady ticking of the wall clock, a sound that now filled the space where her husband's voice used to be. She had been married to Malik Hartman for 3 beautiful years, and with their first baby on the way, she truly believed their love had reached its highest point. She still remembered the sparkle in his eyes when she told him she was pregnant. "You're going to be the most amazing mom," he had whispered, hugging her so tightly it felt like nothing in the world could touch them. That moment had meant everything to her, proof they were a team, proof their love could welcome a new life into the world. But something had shifted. Malik had started coming home later and later. His voice, once full of excitement, had turned cold and tired. His reasons for working overtime felt empty. Celeste wanted to believe it was just the stress of preparing for their future. But a small voice in her heart kept warning her, something wasn't right. Still, she tried. She set the table that night with extra care, cooking his favorite meal, grilled salmon, mashed potatoes, and a fresh salad. She lit a candle, hoping it would spark something, anything, between them again. But time passed. 8 o'clock. Then 9. Then 10. His chair sat empty. The food untouched. Celeste sat there in silence, slowly running her finger around the edge of her wine glass. Her phone lay face up on the table. No calls. No messages. This wasn't the first time Malik had been late without a reason. But something about tonight felt heavier. Like a cold fog she couldn't escape. Finally, she picked up her phone and called him. "Hey, it's me. Dinner's ready. Just call me when you can," she said softly, her voice shaking despite her efforts. She placed the phone down, took a deep breath, and told herself he'd walk through the door any minute, maybe with that charming grin of his, ready to make everything feel okay again. But the minutes turned into hours. The silence wrapped around her like a blanket she didn't ask for. She stood up, slowly clearing the plates. Her heart felt like it was carrying a weight she couldn't name. She turned off the lights, and just as she did, click, the front door opened. There he was. Malik. His tie was loose. His shirt slightly wrinkled. And there was a smell clinging to him, one she didn't recognize. "You're still up?" he asked casually, as if walking in at midnight was just normal. Celeste's chest tightened. 1,000 questions clawed at her throat. But she didn't ask. She didn't scream. She just gave a soft smile and said, "Dinner's in the fridge, if you're hungry." Because right now, the silence felt safer than the truth. But she wasn't blind. She noticed the signs. He barely listened when she talked. He stared at his phone like it held the world. That perfume she didn't wear was on his clothes more than once. At first, she blamed her hormones. Told herself maybe she was being too emotional. But then, he started showering at strange hours. His phone was always face down, and he took calls in hushed voices. One night, as she curled up on the couch, trying to ignore the chill in her heart, she heard it, his phone buzzing from the kitchen counter. He had forgotten it that morning in a rush. Celeste glanced at the screen. Raven Sinclair. The name flashed more than once. She didn't know a Raven. But the way the name looked on that screen made her stomach twist. Her fingers moved before she could stop them. She reached for the phone, hands trembling, hovering over the screen, ready to unlock it. But right before she touched it, the screen went black. She froze. Was she really about to go through his phone? A knot of guilt rose in her throat. And yet, something didn't feel right. Something dark was growing. And the truth? It was getting harder to ignore. Celeste Morgan had never been the type to go through her husband's phone. She trusted Malik, or at least, she used to. But lately, something inside her was unraveling. Her gut kept telling her something was wrong, and the way he acted like everything was normal only made it worse. Night after night, Malik came home later than usual. He'd walk in like it was no big deal, offer no explanation, then scroll through his phone during dinner like she didn't exist. Finally, one evening, Celeste couldn't hold it in anymore. "Malik," she said quietly, trying hard to hide the shake in her voice. He barely looked up from his plate, uninterested in the home-cooked dinner she had made just for him. He mumbled, not even pausing the scrolling. Celeste tightened her grip on her fork. Her heart thudded in her chest. Who's Raven? The room fell silent. His thumb froze mid-swipe. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Was it guilt? Annoyance? She couldn't tell. Then, as if he had flipped a switch, Malik laughed, but the sound felt fake. Raven? Where's that coming from? Celeste's stomach turned. Your phone rang this morning, she said, her voice trembling. Her name kept showing up. Malik's smile vanished. His eyes turned sharp and cold. You were looking at my phone, he snapped. Celeste shook her head quickly. No, it was just there on the counter. He cut her off. You're being paranoid. You always overthink everything. His tone sliced through her like ice. It wasn't just the name Raven that stung, it was how he made her feel crazy for even asking. Like she was the problem. Just like that, the conversation ended. He went back to scrolling. And Celeste sat there, heartbroken and silent. The days that followed felt like a slow unraveling. The lies didn't stop, they multiplied. Malik's excuses got weaker. His nights out got longer. And the space between them grew so wide, Celeste felt like she was holding on to him with fingertips that were slowly slipping. And then, it happened. One afternoon, Celeste decided to surprise Malik at his office near downtown Atlanta with lunch, something simple to bring back some warmth between them. She walked down the hallway toward his office, a smile forced on her face, but then she heard it. His voice. Coming from inside, through the cracked door. You know I don't love her anymore. Celeste stopped in her tracks. Her stomach dropped. He continued, his voice low and flat. I'm just waiting for the right time. Once the baby's born, I'll end it. She's only here because of the pregnancy. Celeste's knees nearly gave out. She gripped her stomach protectively, as if shielding her child from his words. Her heart thundered in her ears. Then another voice answered, soft and feminine. You say that, Malik, but I need proof. I don't want to be the other woman forever. Celeste's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice. Raven Sinclair. Without thinking, she pushed the door open. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. Waiting for the right time, she repeated, barely able to get the words out. Malik spun around, his face pale. Raven, sitting casually on his desk, smirked like she had already won. Celeste stared at him, her voice cracking. You were really going to leave me, after everything? Malik opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The silence said everything. And in that moment, something inside Celeste shattered. The man she loved wasn't coming back. The next few days passed in a fog. Celeste wanted to believe this was just a mistake, that Malik would wake up and see what he was destroying. But the more she remembered his cold expression, the less she could lie to herself. He wasn't sorry. He had meant every word. And if she confronted him again, he'd just gaslight her, twist the truth like he always did, until she felt like she was imagining things. But Celeste needed proof. Solid proof. So, on a cold Friday evening, she followed her instincts. Malik had told her he had a late business meeting. But Celeste had already checked his calendar. There was no meeting. Celeste's hands shook as she pulled into the parking lot of a luxury hotel in downtown Atlanta. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Please let me be wrong, she whispered to herself. But when she stepped out of the car, what she saw broke her. There he was. Malik Hartman. And wrapped around his arm was Raven Sinclair. They were laughing, not quietly, not secretly, but loudly and proudly, like they had nothing to hide. As if she was the wife. Celeste's world tilted. Nausea climbed her throat as her legs moved on their own. She stumbled forward, heart racing. Malik, she called out, her voice slicing through the night. He turned, startled, then annoyed. His smile vanished. Celeste? What the hell are you doing here? Raven curled closer to him with a smug look, her hand tightening around his arm. She followed you, she said with a mocking smile. Celeste didn't even look at her. Her eyes were locked on the man she had given everything to. So this is it, she said, her voice trembling. You're not even hiding it anymore? Malik sighed, rubbing his temples like she was the problem. Celeste, don't make a scene. Not here. But she wasn't having it anymore. You told her you don't love me, Celeste said, her voice cracking under the weight of her heartbreak. You told her you were going to leave me after the baby is born. Malik didn't deny it. He didn't even flinch. And that was the final blow. Celeste gasped, a broken sob escaping her lips. She turned and walked away, her body aching, her soul crushed, knowing the man she had once called her husband was now a complete stranger. Later that night, she sat on the edge of their bed, no, his bed now, staring at the packed suitcase he had dropped on the floor like it was trash. Malik stood near the door, arms crossed, a mix of boredom and frustration on his face. You're blowing this out of proportion, he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. Celeste's fists curled at her sides. She tried to breathe, but her chest was on fire. Out of proportion, she repeated, her voice low, sharp. I saw you at a hotel with her. I heard you say you were waiting until the baby's born to leave me. How is that not a big deal? Her voice cracked as she fought to hold herself together. Malik rolled his eyes and gave a practiced little scoff. You're twisting everything. I was just venting, Celeste. Things have been hard between us. Raven's just someone I can talk to. It's not what you think. His voice was calm. Too calm. Like he'd said these lies before. But Celeste wasn't the same naive woman anymore. You're lying to my face, she said, her voice shaking. And the worst part? You're trying to make me feel crazy for catching you. Malik exhaled loudly, like he was the one who needed a break. You're pregnant, he said flatly. Your emotions are all over the place. You need to stop letting your imagination run wild. The words hit her like a slap. He wasn't just lying, he was gaslighting her. Twisting reality. Making her doubt what she knew in her bones. I gave you everything, Malik. My love. My trust. My future, she cried, tears now falling freely. And now you're making me feel like I'm losing my mind when the truth is standing right in front of me. But Malik didn't care. He didn't even look sorry. I can't do this right now, he said coldly, grabbing his car keys. Where are you going? Celeste asked, her voice cracking. He didn't answer. The door slammed shut behind him, echoing through the house like a gunshot. And Celeste stood there, shaking alone, in the ruins of the life she had tried so hard to hold on to. The next day, Celeste wasn't expecting anyone. She was still sitting in the living room, numb, when the front door opened. And in walked Raven Sinclair, bold, confident, like she owned the place. Celeste froze. Her heart thudded in her chest as she took in the sight of the woman who had stolen everything. Raven wore a red dress that hugged her curves. Her lips curled into a smug smirk as she looked around. Cozy little place, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. A bit outdated, but I guess it worked for you. Celeste clenched her jaw, refusing to let this woman see the pain. But deep inside, something sharp and dangerous began to rise. There was a slight shake in Celeste Morgan's hands, but her voice stayed calm. Why are you here? She asked, trying hard not to let Raven Sinclair see the cracks forming in her strength. Raven let out a low, mocking laugh and tilted her head, clearly enjoying the moment. Oh, let's not act like we don't know how this ends, she said, stepping forward with confidence. Malik doesn't want you, Celeste. He's just been waiting for the right moment to tell you himself. Since you showed up early to the truth, I figured I'd help speed it along. She reached into her designer purse and pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper. With a flick of her wrist, she tossed it onto the coffee table like trash. Celeste's breath caught in her throat as she saw the bold heading, Divorce Papers. Her knees nearly gave out, but she stood her ground. He couldn't even hand them to me himself? She asked, her voice tight, rage bubbling just beneath the surface. Raven shrugged, the corners of her lips curling into a cruel smile. Why bother? We both know how this ends. He's choosing me. Celeste stared at the papers, her vision blurring with tears as the full weight of betrayal sank in. But under the heartbreak, something else stirred. Not sadness. Not even grief. Fire. She looked up slowly, her voice calm but cutting. You think you've won? Raven smiled wider, stepping even closer. Oh honey, she whispered, I know I have. He tells me everything, how you've become dull, how he only stayed because of the baby, how. Slap. The sound echoed like thunder. Celeste's hand had struck Raven across the face hard. The room went dead silent. The air buzzed with tension. Raven froze, her eyes blazing with shock and fury as her hand flew to her stinging cheek. Celeste, breathing heavily, clenched her jaw and pointed toward the door. "Get out of my house," she said, voice low and fierce. And for the first time, Raven hesitated. In the days that followed, Celeste drifted through a fog of disbelief. She tried to stay busy, folding baby clothes, arranging the nursery, anything to remind herself she still had something left to hold on to. But heartbreak is never finished when you think it is. That morning, she reached into Malik's closet to grab one of his sweaters. Her hand brushed something hard behind a row of jackets. A box. She pulled it out with trembling fingers and opened it. Inside was a positive pregnancy test. But it wasn't hers. Her legs gave out, and she sank to the floor, staring at the one thing she hadn't wanted to believe. It was true. Raven wasn't just an affair. She was pregnant. With Malik's child. Celeste's heart cracked wide open. She clutched the box to her chest as tears spilled down her face. A silent scream stayed stuck in her throat. That evening, Malik walked through the door like nothing had happened. But Celeste was waiting. The test sat quietly on the coffee table between them, an unspoken accusation. Malik looked at it and sighed like she was the one being dramatic. "You went through my stuff," he said coldly. Celeste's breath caught. That's all he had to say? Her voice trembled. "That's your reaction?" Malik rubbed his face, pretending to be exhausted. "We have to be realistic. Raven's having my baby. Things are going to be different now." Celeste laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "Different," she said, slowly rising to her feet. "You mean I'm being replaced? Thrown away? Like I never mattered?" He didn't respond. He didn't apologize. He didn't fight for her. He just stood there, silent. And in that moment, Celeste finally understood. She was alone. Truly and completely alone. So she turned her back on him, her heart officially shattered, and walked out of the room. Because if he couldn't even fight for her, she sure as hell wasn't going to beg. That night, she sat in the dim light of the bedroom that once felt like her safe place. Now it felt like a museum of pain, filled with memories and pieces of a life she no longer had. And Malik? He didn't even look back. He walked out again, like it was nothing, leaving her behind, with everything broken. Celeste sat alone in the room that used to feel like a safe place, but tonight, the walls felt like strangers. The house was cold, quiet, and filled with a kind of sadness that made it hard to breathe. It didn't feel like home anymore. Just a building, one she no longer belonged in. The unsigned divorce papers still sat on the dresser. Her fingers gently traced the edge of the page. Some small, broken part of her still hoped that maybe Malik would come to his senses, that he'd remember what they had, that he'd realize how deeply he'd hurt her. But no. The truth had slapped her in the face too many times to pretend anymore. Then, a loud knock shattered the silence. She glanced at the clock. 12:17 a.m. Her heart skipped. Who would come at this hour? Celeste slowly walked to the door. Her breath hitched when she opened it. 2 uniformed officers stood in the hallway. Their faces were blank. "Ma'am," one of them said flatly, "we've been instructed to escort you off the property." Celeste froze, gripping the doorframe like it might keep her from falling. "Excuse me," she whispered. The second officer shifted uncomfortably. "Your husband filed a formal report. According to his statement, you're no longer a resident here. Legally, you're trespassing." Her stomach turned. Trespassing? This was her home. The place she had filled with love, where she imagined raising their child. Now, she was being treated like a stranger. "There must be a mistake," she said quietly, trying not to cry. "I live here. I'm his wife." But the officers didn't budge. "We're just following orders," the first one replied. "We need you to leave. Now." Her legs felt weak. Like the floor beneath her was giving way. This wasn't just an affair anymore. Malik had completely erased her from his life, as if she never existed at all. "Can I at least get my things?" she whispered. One officer nodded and stepped aside. But when she walked back into the bedroom, she froze. Everything was gone. Her clothes. Her shoes. Her jewelry. Even the smallest pieces of herself, gone. A chill ran down her spine. This wasn't Malik's doing alone. Raven. She had cleaned out everything. Celeste gasped. Her breath trembled as she picked up the only thing they hadn't touched, a dusty framed photo from their wedding day. She held it close to her chest. And with one final look at the home that was no longer hers, she stepped into the night. No bags. No backup plan. Just the unbearable weight of betrayal and the clothes on her back. Rain poured down in heavy sheets as Celeste stood on the sidewalk. Her suitcase clutched tightly in her hands, water dripping from her hair. She didn't know where to go. She had no money. No family to run to. No one waiting to take her in. Everything she had built with Malik was gone. Their marriage, shattered in a matter of days. She wandered the city streets like a ghost, passing restaurants they used to eat at, stores they once window shopped together. Places that once held memories, now just hurt. Eventually, her legs gave out. She collapsed onto a freezing metal bench at a bus stop with no buses coming. Tears streamed down her face. How did it come to this? She pulled her coat tighter around herself, trying to stay warm. Her body shook, but it wasn't from the cold, it was the pain. Then, her phone buzzed. Her heart stopped when she saw the name flash across the screen. Malik Hartman. But it wasn't a call. It was a notification from her bank. Her hands trembled as she opened the app. Balance, $0. Celeste gasped. He had frozen her account. Malik hadn't just thrown her out. He made sure she had nothing. Nothing to survive on. Nowhere to go. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. She pressed her palms into her eyes, trying not to fall apart. The man she had loved, trusted with her future, her heart, her baby, had turned into a stranger capable of cruelty she never imagined. Just as she was about to break completely, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a different name. Jordan Wells. Her breath caught in her chest. The one person who had always been there, even when she had drifted away. With shaking hands, she answered. Celeste. His voice was warm, concerned, and firm, like a lifeline cutting through the storm. That was all it took. The tears returned in full. Jordan, she sobbed. I have nowhere to go. Silence. Then a sharp breath. Tell me where you are, he said without hesitation. I'm coming. And in that moment, for the first time in what felt like forever, hope broke through the darkness. Celeste. Jordan Wells' voice came through the phone, full of worry and urgency. That was all it took. The dam inside her finally broke. A choked sob escaped her lips. Jordan. I have nowhere to go. There was a short pause on the line, then his voice came back stronger, steadier. Tell me where you are. I'm coming to get you. And just like that, for the first time in what felt like forever, something flickered in Celeste's chest. Hope. Later that night, she sat curled up on Jordan's couch, wrapped in a warm blanket. Her body trembled, but not just from the cold. The rain tapped gently against the window. The only other sound was her soft sniffling, trying to hold back more tears. Jordan sat nearby, watching her closely. He quietly set a cup of hot tea on the table beside her. I can't believe he did this to you, he said, shaking his head, voice tight with frustration. Celeste gave a bitter laugh, her voice rough from crying. Believe it. He threw me out like I was nothing. And Raven, she made sure I had nothing left. Jordan's jaw clenched. His fists curled. That piece of, he stopped himself, trying to stay calm. After everything you gave him. Celeste wiped her eyes, exhaustion sinking into her bones. I don't even know who he is anymore, she whispered. I keep thinking maybe I could have done something. Maybe if I'd loved him better. Jordan interrupted her, firmly, but gently. No. Don't you dare blame yourself for the choices he made. He failed you, Celeste. Not the other way around. Before she could respond, a sharp stabbing pain ripped through her stomach. She gasped. Her teacup slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Celeste. Jordan was at her side in a flash, panic in his eyes. She clutched her belly, her body folding in pain. Something's wrong, she cried, barely able to breathe. Something's wrong. Without hesitation, Jordan grabbed his keys, scooped her up in his arms, and rushed to the car. "I'm taking you to the hospital," he said, his voice shaking but full of determination. Rain pounded against the windshield as they sped through the city. Celeste dug her nails into her palms, trying to stay calm, but all she could think was, "Please, not the baby. Not this too." Jordan's eyes darted from the road to her pale face, and she saw it. The same fear that gripped her heart was written all over his. For the first time, she realized, she might be losing everything. The sterile white of the hospital room made her feel like she was floating. Celeste lay on the bed, her body weak, her soul gutted. The pain in her abdomen was awful, but nothing compared to what came after. The doctor's voice still rang in her ears. Cold. Empty. "I'm sorry, Ms. Morgan. We couldn't save the pregnancy." And just like that, the last piece of her hope died. She had cried until there was nothing left in her. Her hands clutched the thin hospital sheets like they could somehow hold her together. Jordan never left her side. He held her hand. He sat quietly through the night. He didn't try to fill the silence, he just stayed. But no words could erase what had happened. Malik had taken everything from her. And now, the one thing she had left to hold on to was gone. Later, a nurse entered quietly, avoiding Celeste's red, swollen eyes. "Would you like us to call your husband?" she asked gently. Celeste let out a hollow laugh. It sounded more like a breath than a laugh. "No," she whispered. "He doesn't care." And he really didn't. Because while Celeste lay in that hospital bed, mourning the child they created together, Malik Hartman was nowhere to be found. No call. No text. No visit. Jordan had tried reaching him. And when he finally did, Malik had answered with a voice full of cold detachment. "She lost it? Well, I guess that saves me the trouble of a messy custody case." Those words had sent Jordan into a silent fury. But Celeste didn't need to hear them. She already knew the truth. Malik never wanted this baby. He had just been waiting for a reason to finally walk away. Now, fate had given him exactly what he wanted. When the nurse left the room, Celeste turned her head slowly toward Jordan. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't think I can survive this." He reached out, gently taking her icy hand in his. His eyes were red but filled with grief and strength. "You can, Celeste. And you will." But even then, even as he said the words, she wasn't sure she wanted to. Celeste Morgan sat still in the hospital bed, her body fragile, her spirit colder than it had ever been. She had nothing left. Not love. Not a child. Not a home. Just a hollow version of the woman she once was. The morning sun peeked through the hospital window, but she didn't feel its warmth. It just made the sterile room feel more distant. More real. She thought Malik had shown her the worst of himself. She was wrong. A soft knock on the door. A nurse stepped in, holding a large envelope, her eyes full of quiet pity. "This came for you," she said gently. Celeste took it slowly, her hands numb. She didn't need to open it to know. She could feel what it was. And when her eyes landed on the bold title at the top, her breath caught in her throat. Divorce petition. Each page she flipped felt like a blade pressed to her chest. He hadn't even waited a week. No time for her to heal. No time to grieve. Just one final message. "You're no longer needed." Jordan was beside her instantly. He snatched the papers from her lap, his face flushed with fury. "He couldn't even wait a damn week," he growled. "After everything?" Celeste, though, didn't move. She didn't even cry. She just stared ahead, numb. "He never loved me, did he?" she whispered, almost to herself. Jordan knelt beside her, gripping her hand tightly. "No, Celeste. He didn't love you, he loved control. He loved being in charge. He loved what you gave him. But once he thought he'd taken everything, he believed he could toss you away." His words were sharp, but real. And for the first time, she accepted them. Celeste exhaled, her fingers tracing the last page of the papers, the place where Malik's signature sat. Clean. Cold. Final. "I'm not going to fight it," she said quietly. Jordan looked at her, confused. "What?" "I'm not fighting the divorce," she repeated, her voice strangely calm. "But I'm not walking away like some broken woman, either." This wasn't the end. This was her awakening. Malik wanted her gone? Then fine. But she wasn't going to disappear quietly. He was going to regret everything. Later that evening, Celeste stood in front of the hospital mirror. She barely recognized herself, sunken eyes, pale cheeks, tired beyond belief. But under the devastation, a spark. A flicker of something she hadn't felt in weeks. Survival. He took everything, she whispered to her reflection. Her heart ached. Her body still hurt. But she was still standing. And as long as she was breathing, she wasn't done. If Malik thought she was going to crumble, fade into nothing, he had no idea what was coming. Slowly, she straightened her back. She pulled her shoulders back against the weight of grief still pressing down on her. She turned to Jordan, who had been quietly watching her from the corner of the room. "Take me home," she said. He hesitated. "Celeste, you're still not strong enough." She met his gaze. "Steady. Sure. I need to get out of here, Jordan. I need to start again." That night, she lay in the guest room of Jordan's apartment, the hum of the city outside the window. Her fingers curled around the divorce papers. Tighter. And tighter. The ghosts of her past whispered in her mind, every insult, every betrayal, every cruel word from Malik replaying like a broken record. But this time, they didn't break her. They fueled her. If Malik thought he'd won, he was about to learn the biggest lesson of his life. From the ashes of everything she'd lost, something new was growing. Determination. She would rise. Not for revenge. Not for him. For herself. The version of Celeste who once begged Malik for love was gone. In her place was a woman who would rebuild from nothing. And this time, she would write the rules. A month later, Celeste stood on the edge of the small balcony outside Jordan's apartment. The Atlanta skyline flickered with movement. Cars, lights, life. She had spent the past month facing the darkness. Sleepless nights, quiet mornings filled with silent tears. But tonight,